Long time no see, as they say. It's 10 a.m. Eastern time here on a college football Saturday, week 3. And many of you joined me last night for our big wrap-up show for a Friday. And we had a good time talking college football, talking about who I root for, who I don't root for, which I root for one and don't root for anyone else. We talked about, fan bases. We talked about my most excruciating loss. We talked about some of your experiences. It was a fun show. We talked about predictions, making predictions. We talked about the College Football Playoff Selection Committee and why they have an impossible job. That's what I said. We also talked about why they have screwed up a number of times, and not necessarily in selecting the teams always, but in regards to their argument for why they select the teams that they do, and it's a moving target. We talked college football for about an hour and a half last night. Please check out the video because it was a good time just kicking around the sport that we love between you and I. This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So if you are surfing around online and you've come across my show, you've come across my video, so maybe this is the first time, maybe this is a handful of times now, and you really haven't dove into the videos. Sure, don't watch them all right now. You're getting ready to watch football, or you're getting ready to hang with us for an hour and a half or so. But definitely check out the videos and just understand the quantity, and the big game is the quality of content that we provide on college football each and every week. So consider this week, we have previewed Washington, Utah, Ohio State-TCU 3 times. And which is a good example of my attempts to be as neutral as possible, deliver unbiased. Now, we're all biased, but as much unbiased view as possible. We're all biased, but I try to cut it straight down in regards to logic and stats and facts and trends, and giving an analysis that takes everything into consideration. And that's a good example right there. So we had 3 Ohio State TCU segments, 3 previews, all from the Ohio State side. Why? Because I asked a number of TCU media guests to come on, and I didn't get a response. But that was the aim. So we previewed Ohio State TCU from a number of angles. We have previewed Alabama Ole Miss. I think there's 10 games that we preview this week. Miami-Toledo, Oklahoma, Iowa State, USC-Texas. Just a ton of games that we have looked at this week. Of course, LSU-Auburn, which may be, in fact, even though Ohio State and TCU with College Game Day off to my side here at the home of TCU, and then venturing off, of course, to College Game Day at the game at Jerry's World, AT&T Stadium, that seems to be the game of the week. But what's the most important game? Might be LSU and Auburn. So for the next 90 minutes, we are going to run down the schedule for today and see what you guys have to say as well. So I have sent this link to all my media guests, either on Twitter or via Gmail, to say this is the deal. On Saturday mornings, we're going live from 10 a.m. until the show stalls, which is basically about 11:45 Eastern time. And if you want to jump on, I'm not going to have any lengthy conversations with any particular media guest, but if they want to jump on for a 5 to 10 minute hit on their team, their game, then we'll give it to you. Otherwise, I'm going to talk for 90 minutes plus, and you're going to talk because we've got the phone lines 860-325-3687. My goal for after the season, during the off season, when things, do they slow down? If you've watched me for a long time, you know that it doesn't slow down during the off season, but it needs to slow down so we can take care of some business behind the scenes and bring a better product to you. So one of those would be a better looking display in regards to graphics and production value, where the the phone line would be displayed there graphically right there at the bottom of the screen. 860-325-3687. So I can do all that in post-production, meaning that you see some of the videos that I produce where we throw on the graphics. That's because I recorded and then I put the graphics on via iMovie on the Apple computer on the Mac. But when we go live, I've got no ability to convey that, I don't believe. Anyway, you guys don't care about that. You care about college football. It's a college football Saturday, week 3. What have we learned in the first 2 weeks? Well, let's look at the games today. And I'm going to take you through what to me is the TV schedule. And I'm going to check out the live chat as I always do. So you guys talk amongst yourselves, and I'll pick out some comments and questions to respond to. And if you have comments and questions for me, I will try to find those as well. So we appreciate you jumping on board and checking us out while you prepare for your noon kickoff. And also on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. What I would like to do going forward, and I've done this in and out, and I want to be more consistent, is sending out a poll for most of the big games. So this week we do Ohio State-TCU, LSU-Auburn, Washington-Utah, Oklahoma, Iowa State, and some others. And just winner, Miami-Toledo, winner, Ohio State-TCU, and let you respond and see how those predictions come out for you guys. All right, let's go through the TV schedule after I check out the chat. All right, Ohio State going to destroy TCU, according to Big Papi JT. It's not going to be close. 45-14. I said last night 38-28, which brings us to the line on the game if you care about such things. I used to not care about such things. You know, growing up watching college football, I predicted the games, and it only mattered who won the game. Doesn't matter if Ohio State wins by 1 or they win by 100, right? Or TCU. Well, it's all about against the spread now. Nobody looks at my record straight up. They look at it, the record against the spread, which was really good in week 1 and really awful in week 2. So good morning, Bash Gaming. Good to hear from you last night. We gave basically the show last night was Bash. Bash Gaming was the show. He was the show last night. He took it away. Bryant, good to hear from you. TCU going to get spanked. Bash Gaming. I'm trying to get people in here. Man, that is phenomenal. So I've had so many people like Bash Gaming, especially in recent weeks, recent months, because I think you guys have an idea that I want to invest more into this, do more here, and I'm putting probably 50 hours a week into this, in addition to actually working. And because my kids have grown up to a certain extent, it makes it easier than it would have 5 years ago. So I'm really investing a lot of time and effort into this, and you guys are responding. I think you see that. I think you see the value that we bring with historical knowledge, current knowledge, perspective, some broadcasting skills, that sort of thing, and that I'm involving you guys as much as I possibly can. If there are better ways and more ways I can involve you, certainly let me know what those are. So guys like Bash Gaming are stepping up saying, hey, I've tweeted this out. I've retweeted. I've shared this video. I'm trying to bring people in. I've signed up for the newsletter. I've told other people to sign up for the newsletter. You guys have been phenomenal. Eric, hey, Mark. How you, bud? Sorry. It's been a while. Work's been crazy. We are 100 positions short. I would love to know what you do, Eric. 100 positions short. My department runs around 750. And when I say my department, it's not my department. It's production operations at ESPN, but it's about 750 strong. And yeah, 100 positions is serious lack of person power, we should say. Manpower. Can I say that now? Politically correct. Person power. All right. Brian's back on here. Bash Gaming. I'm going to give others opportunities to talk after my half-hour discussion with you. So the discussion every week is basically going to be you in the chat. It's going to be you online, 860-325-3687. It's also going to be, I sent an email, and this is typically an unsuccessful attempt by me because when I reach out to my media contributors one-on-one, they typically respond and come on. When I just blast out a mass email, they typically don't respond, and especially in the moment. So I told them late last night, I sent an email and said, this is what I'm doing every Saturday from 10 to 12 Eastern. I'm going live, and it's going to be a freelance show. I'm going to talk about the games, of course. That's front and center. I'm going to invite the fans to talk. I'm going to invite you to talk. So if you want to do a quick hit on your team, your game, come on. But I just blasted it out to like 55 people and did the same on Twitter. So typically that doesn't get a response. I don't know why. But I can't individually send emails to 55 people or whatever it turned out to be. George, it's only 7 in the morning in Oregon, but here we go. George, wow, 7 in the morning. It's obviously 10 in the morning here, now 10:15. And yeah, I was up until about 4:15, 4:30, and I woke up about 6 times between 4:15 and 9:30. And so this is kind of a rough go for me. And if you guys really watched the videos and noticed the time of day, there's no question I hit my stride sometime in the evening. In the evening, at night, those are the best videos in terms of me just actually having a coherent thought and speaking without stumbling all over the place. But when it's 10 in the morning, 7 in the morning, even at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not necessarily the best time for me to record, but here we go, because we got to get this out of the way for college football at noon. And I'll be asking you guys what games you guys will want to watch. And I'm going to lay out for you, as I did last week, hey, this is my game plan for today. Depending on how the games go, this is the game plan. All right, Navy Thomas, how many games got axed this weekend? So that's the Virginia Tech game against whomever they were playing. They had a run of Old Dominion, William and Mary, and East Carolina. One of those three. The Virginia Tech game's gone. The game that I really would like to have seen, West Virginia, NC State, that was a showcase game for Ryan Finley versus Will Greer. NC State not getting a whole lot of love at this point in the season. West Virginia, kind of the darlings, the chic pick of the Big 12. It would have been nice to see the Mountaineers go into North Carolina, have to take on a decent NC State team, a top 25 to 35 team, and see what was going to happen there. That's the game I'm really missing. Central Florida, North Carolina, if it was 3 years ago, bring it on. But then again, North Carolina was a lot better and Central Florida was a lot worse. But it's UCF, North Carolina. That game's gone. There was about 5 or 6 games. I believe South Carolina's not playing. Are they playing today? Or did their game? All you have to do is open up the ESPN schedule, and they've got the complete schedule. It'll take me 2 clicks, and it shows us exactly what games will not be played. I know that the Clemson game was moved up to noon. Okay, the matchups today that have been canceled. There's 6 games, some canceled, some postponed. So Southern Miss at App State postponed. So they have evidently found another time, or maybe they just said postponed and we would like to reschedule. Norfolk State at Liberty. I know that many of you, your plans today, your college football parties, your plans have been crushed by this postponement, but Norfolk State at Liberty, gone. Okay, the games that have been canceled. East Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Blacksburg. West Virginia, NC State, the one that hurts me. UCF, North Carolina, and Marshall, South Carolina. And of course, we say all this knowing that these are football games. These are just football games, and clearly what's going on in that area and some of the devastation. I was watching some of the coverage last night, and wow, it's just a tragic and devastating situation that we see, unfortunately, seem to grow. I don't have the stats in front of me. I'm not a weather geek by any stretch of the. Most of the time, if it rains or snows for the first time around here, I have no idea it's coming. I don't watch the weather. I check out the forecast on my phone once in a while. I'm not a weather guy, but to watch the devastation down there, and it just seems like to a lot of people that these kind of devastating storms are increasing, and we know the debate over global warming and climate control and all that, but devastating what's going on there, even for the parts of the state and that region that are not being hit necessarily by winds that are that damaging, but it's such a massive storm in terms of coverage area. This Florence storm that's covering 500 to 600 miles, that and just hovering. And that's obviously the issue with the rain, is the massive area, then also the speed of the storm, or the lack thereof, and then it just hovers and it just soaks. There were estimates in the worst parts of this storm that it's going to hit and level an amount of rain of 20 to 40 inches. Crazy. George drank too much beer last week. Missed all the late games. 1 or 2 bottles today. It's a good thing, George. It's a good thing for you. Cashboy D, proud of Pastor Rick. Dennis is on the line. Dennis never has anything good to say about the show, but you know what, Dennis, hang on. That's fine. That's fine. Not everybody's gonna love what I do and love my opinions, and that's fine. Hey, you're here. You're here. That's the important thing. It's all about, what do I say over and over and over and over? And see, I'm tripping over my words at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's all about the discussion, the debate, the analysis. That's what we bring. Discussion, debate, analysis. All right. Big Poppy JT, Vanderbilt over Notre Dame upset alert. I mentioned this last night for those of you who weren't listening or didn't get a chance to join us live late last night, is that in the first 2 weeks, I predicted all the top 25 games, plus a few other games of interest outside the top 25. I predicted 19 games against the spread week 1, 19 in week 2. So that's 38 games. 10 were outright upsets. 10 outright upsets out of 38 games in the first 2 weeks. And here they are. Because what this tells me as a guy who predicts games, it's only a small sample size, but it basically tells us that I think most of us are inherently conservative when it comes to picking games. We look at the games and the favorite always looks like, okay, well, they're not going to beat them. They're not going to beat them. They can't pull off that upset. And we get through and we may pick 1 or 2 upsets that are like 2-point upsets, when in fact, there are upsets to be found. Week 1, Northwestern 2-point underdog at Purdue wins. I don't consider that an upset, but technically it's an upset. So there's one. Maryland winning over Texas is a 13-point dog, upset number 2. Ole Miss 2-point underdog against Texas Tech, 1. That's number 3. Again, I don't consider that a huge upset or any kind of upset typically. That was a toss-up game to me. So was Northwestern and Purdue, but according to Vegas, an upset. There's 3, but 1 real upset there, Maryland, Texas. All right, other upsets. There were 2 other upsets. Oh, of course, on the weekend, Sunday night, LSU 3.5-point dog against Miami, 1. Virginia Tech, a 7.5-point favorite against Florida State, 1. That's 5 out of 19 games that were upsets, and I would consider 3 of those to be upsets. 2 of them definitely upsets. The LSU Miami, I consider that a bit of a toss-up, but still 3.5 points. But technically, according to Vegas, 5 upsets in 19 games. Okay, last week, week 2. All right. Here are the upsets technically. Duke on the road against Northwestern, 3-point underdog, won by 14. There's 1 upset. South Florida at home against Georgia Tech, a 3.5-point dog, won by 11. 2 upsets. Next upset last week was Colorado getting 3 points on the road at Nebraska. They won by 5. Sorry, Navy Thomas. There's 3 upsets last week. The 4th upset was almost Clemson's Texas A&M. The 4th upset, of course, I want to skip that one because I want to highlight that one last. Where's the other one? Oh, Arizona State, Michigan State. In the desert, Arizona State, 6.5-point underdog, 5.5 to 6.5 points. They win. There's 4. And then the last one, Kentucky is a 14-point underdog. Wins in Gainesville, of course, a historic win for the first time in 32 years, wins. And so 19 games the first week, 5 upsets. 19 games last week, 5 upsets. And also each week there was one double-digit upset. Maryland, 13-point dog against Texas, wins. Kentucky, 14-point underdog against Florida, wins. Week 3, you find the upsets for me. I don't think you're going to find it in the first 4 or 5 games here. Clemson, 33-point favorite against Georgia State. Georgia, 33-point favorite against Middle Tennessee. Iowa State, let me give you the favorites first. Oklahoma, 18.5-point favorite against Iowa State. Penn State, 35 over Kent State. Miami, 10.5 over Toledo. Ding! That could be one. Syracuse, 3-point underdog at home against Florida State. Stanford, UC Davis, no line. Vanderbilt or Notre Dame is the 13.5-point favorite against Vandy. Wisconsin's 22.5-point pick against BYU, according to Vegas. How about Auburn, 10.5-point favorite against LSU? Oklahoma State at home's a 2-point favorite against Boise. Michigan by 36 over SMU. Texas Tech, Houston, 1.5-point game. Texas Tech. To me, that's not an underdog. Typically, that's not an underdog by the true sense of the word, but technically it is. Oregon, a 42-point pick against San Jose State. Wouldn't that be something? Alabama by 21.5 against Ole Miss. I don't really consider that feasible, realistic. Could it happen? Of course. We saw Stanford in 2007 as a 41-point dog beat USC. Mississippi State, 33-point favorite against Louisiana. Mizzou, 6-point favorite at Purdue. That could be an upset. TCU, Ohio State, 13-point spread. This is heavy. TCU, yes, they could win the game, absolutely. USC going to Texas is a 3.5-point dog. They could win. Utah at home is a 5.5-point dog. Yeah, there's 10 possible upsets. San Diego State at home. They beat Arizona State last year in Tempe. This year, San Diego State at home against Arizona State, 6-point underdog. There's 11 possible upsets. And I'll even throw in South Florida, Illinois. And this is just the top 25 games plus a few other ones. Of course, there are other games being played that could be possibly upsets. That's week 3 of college football. I gave you my picks last night. If you want a refresher, I'll definitely let you know. Wake me up, Donovan. I'm right there with you. Right there with you. I'm a late night guy in this 10 o'clock in the morning. And for George, kudos to George, 7 o'clock on the West Coast, and anybody else on the West Coast, or a slight golf hand clap for those people in the mountain time zone where it was 8 o'clock in the morning when we started. Colton's back. I've not seen Colton for a while. Good to see you, Colton. Welcome back. Dennis, LSU got lucky. First game, fans. Something there chops. All right. Let's see if you guys had some picks in here. Eric, I've seen Miami and Vegas moved up to 12.5. Give me that 12.5. Can I throw that on my board then? On my picks, just in case I need the 2 points. I've got Toledo plus the 10.5. I will take that, Mr. Birch. I'll take the 2 extra points, 12.5. No upsets today. No upsets, according to Dennis. You're saying no real upsets or against the Vegas line. No upsets today. I got to say there's going to be an upset on that board somewhere. Yes, Colton. Kansas is favored this week. Rutgers, I don't remember who they beat in week 1. It was like a Wagner, Howard, whoever they beat. And then they lost to Ohio State, of course, by 49 points last week. Kansas This was in the newsletter notes. So for those of you who don't subscribe to my newsletter, The Voice of College Football, you would have missed this. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you saw it somewhere else. I tout it as information you're not going to find all in one place, but obviously that information's out there. I take notes during the games on Saturdays. That's where most of that information comes from, is me jumping all over the place online and watching the games and taking all those notes. So Kansas, this is inconceivable to me that a football program in the Big 12 and a Power 5 conference could have this kind of track record. Kansas had lost 46 consecutive games on the road. During this time, this goes back to 2009. My kids were little. This goes back to 2009, almost 10 years, that Kansas had not defeated anybody on the road. And they go to places like Ohio University. And we could go through the games in which Kansas plays on the road against, I don't know that they've traveled to an FCS, but a group of 5. No road wins in 9 years, 46 consecutive games. That's just inconceivable. And then I went through all the years I was thinking, okay, it wasn't a Big 12 game. So I don't know when the last time Kansas won a Big 12 game on the road. The last time Kansas had won a road game, they beat UTEP 45-42. That was the big road win the last time the Jayhawks won a road game. So Colton making the point that Kansas is actually a favorite against a Power 5 team, that being Rutgers. That game is at home. Kansas, they're going to start Big 12 play next week. They are 1-26, and I think you guys know who Kansas beat. It wasn't a team that we would think Kansas would be able to sneak by. Iowa State in the past, or Baylor since they've been down. Kansas, of course, over Charlie Strong a few years ago, winning that game. That's David Beaty's one win. I can't believe I'm talking so much Kansas football. If this wasn't a pregame for the noon games, I would run through Kansas's. I might do it anyway. I think this is hilarious. When is the last time Kansas beat anyone in the Big 12 on the road? We're going to have to go back before 2009 and look at these embarrassing losses. So Kansas lost to Nicholls State last week, or 2 weeks ago. They lost to Nicholls State. 2017, they lost to Central Michigan by 18 points. They lost to Ohio by 12. Their win was against Southeast Missouri State. 2016, Kansas beat Rhode Island. And they won the infamous Texas game, 2016, at home against Texas, 24-21. They lost to the Likes in 2016 to Ohio by 16. They played Ohio home and home, and they lost by 16-12. They lost to Central Michigan by 18 in 2017. Okay, back to 2015. They lost to Memphis by 32. They lost to Rutgers by 13 on the road. They lost to South Dakota State by 3 in FCS. That was their 0-12 year. One of them. 2014, Kansas lost to Duke by 38. They lost to Central Michigan. No, they beat Central Michigan. My bad. They did beat Central Michigan, a 7-6 MAC team, by 2 touchdowns. All right. In 2013, they beat South Dakota. They beat Louisiana Tech by 3 at home. They lost to Rice by 9. In 2012, Kansas beat South Dakota State. They love playing South Dakota State. They beat them by 2 touchdowns. They lost to Rice again. Kansas lost to Rice consecutive years by 1 and 9 points. They lost to Northern Illinois by 7. In 2011, they beat poor McNeese State by 18. Otherwise, okay, they beat Northern Illinois by 3, but that was at home. They lost to Georgia Tech by 42 points. They gave up 66 points to Georgia Tech on the road. Kansas in 2010, they beat Georgia Tech at home by 3. They lost at Southern Miss by 15. They beat New Mexico State at home by 26. Okay, Back to 2009, that was the last time Kansas won a road game. They won at Texas El Paso. They won at Texas El Paso. When is the last time they won a road game in the Big 12? Not in 2008. They won all their they in 2008 they were 8-5, but they lost all their Big 12 games on the road. They beat Iowa State. No. There it is. 2008 Iowa State. Okay, Kansas beat Iowa State, who was 2-10, 35-33 on the road. All right. Probably lost all of you on that one. I know Kansas has been awful. We all have known that. We've all tuned out to Kansas football, except to know that they're getting killed every week and losing embarrassing games to FCS teams and MAC teams. We all get that, but I guess I just didn't realize 9 years since they beat anybody on the road, and that was UTEP. Hey, Navy Thomas, I know that South Dakota State is no joke. They've either won or taken a number of other teams to the wire. Kansas State, Minnesota, Iowa. They play one or two really good teams or capable, competent Power 5 teams from the Big 10 or the Big 12 just about every year. And they sometimes get blown out, but they typically give them a scare. That's typically the script. And sometimes they pull out the win. But to lose to those teams over and over and over and over is embarrassing. Well, Bash Gaming 2007 was the big high point year for Kansas football with Todd Reesing. They won the Orange Bowl. They finished 12-1. Think about how close Kansas came to playing in the national championship game that year. They went 12-1. They did not win the Big 12 because they lost the wrong game and they were in the wrong division. So that was the LSU year in which they, with 2 losses, made it to the BCS championship game. Country boy, where are you? Donovan found you. Donovan sees you somewhere. But it's good to see you, country boy, wherever you are in here. 28 AD 28, which I continue to find amazing that I read that as too bad 28 for so long. Jamie, back in from Oregon. I don't know if Jamie's actually located in Oregon, but he joins us with a bunch of Oregon propaganda. And Oregon playing another one of their stellar non-conference games today against San Jose State as a mere 42-point favorite. Jamal tells us that Ole Miss won't score more than 3 times. I see a bunch of field goals. So Jamal, I've not seen that name. Jamal Dawson. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV. If you've been watching for a long time, I appreciate it. A lot of people just watch and don't comment. If you're coming across this for the first time or for the first handful of times, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. I invite your comments, your questions, your suggestions. And there's a comment right there. Ole Miss will not score more than 3 times. And most of those are going to be field goals, I guess, from that comment. I've got Bama winning and covering the spread 21.5. You cannot show up on the field against this Alabama team with Tua at quarterback and his ability to throw and hit open receivers. There's a guy on the internet. Somebody pointed out this guy to me, and we've got somebody on the line, coming on the line here. We'll see who this is in just a second. Mark Rogers TV's on the line with...
sorry.
Hey.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can't even see who that is. You're in the dark.
Sorry, let me get my background.
No, that's quite all right. I can't even recognize the voice, but obviously you get a link, so...
There we are. Here's your Manhattan skyline behind me.
What is going on, man?
Nothing. I just I covered about 65% last year, and when you and I agree, I end up covering about 80% of the time last year. So here we are in
That's a good stat to know. So I would love to know, okay, so you pick, what games do you select?
I only do college football. I don't do anything else.
Sure. So you do college football, but what games do you decide to pick? Do you pick just every game in the FBS or?
No. So like week 1, I was heavy on Wyoming coming out of the blocks when they were playing New Mexico State. I just thought that defense, and you go with a quarterback that's inexperienced, college transfer, I felt that was just going to be a lock. And by the end of the second quarter, I was already counting my money. Today, I'm heavy on Texas money line because I just think JT Daniels went into Stanford last week. They had, I think, like 50,000 people in attendance for the game. He looked horrific. This week, he's going to go into Austin, Texas, where there's 101, and they might cover. They might cover the hook, but I don't see them getting. I don't see them getting anything outside of a W there. So I'm laying 160 on the money line. Today, I think Vanderbilt has a shot to win outright at Notre Dame. And at 13.5, I will gladly take all those points. But I'm selective. I don't bet the board or anything like that. I also think Maryland is a better team than people think. And I think Maryland will win in a home game against a team that's playing their first road game of the year in a rout.
So this is fantastic. So I've got a lot of questions here, and we're going to start with question number one. We're going to go back to square number one, and this is extremely embarrassing on my point because I sent you the link.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't even know who I'm on the line with. I had 107 people on as guests last year, so please excuse me.
My name is Will. I live in Manhattan, and I work in finance.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So you picked up the link from Twitter.
Yes.
All right. Well, that explains it right there. All right. Yeah, you don't need to give your full name or anything like that, but I got it. Will in Manhattan. This is tremendous. So I thought at some point you had been on, and we had absolutely I was clueless as to picking up when we had you on. So
I have zero idea about technology, and so I apologize if I interfered into anything here.
No. This is great. This is fine. So where you're sitting is fine, but for future reference, if you're comfy and as long as we can hear you, that's great. But production rule number 101 is that you never sit in front of a window. Even though I'm doing it, I've got lights hitting me in the face. So you become a silhouette. So whatever you can do. So I got some great questions here about your roughly 65% against the spread the first 2 weeks.
No, all of last year.
All of last year. And
yeah, when you and I agree on games, I was about 80% last year.
Well, I need to agree with you a lot more than I do.
And so of all the handicappers I see on Twitter or YouTube or all these jackoffs, you're the only guy I really follow.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you.
This is a mutually beneficial financial relationship for me.
That's funny that you came up with that. So I need to know what your picks are each week before I head into Saturday or Thursday night. That's going to be key right there.
You've actually persuaded me last year against wrong picks too, where I thought I had the right side and then I saw an angle and I was like, maybe I've got the wrong side.
That's very cool. So I would love to trade emails because I've got some ideas for next football season. But so your picks aren't available to anyone. So I could just run down the games and get your picks. You're not trying to push us somewhere. If we are, that's fine.
No, not at all. I mean, there's like 60 games on the board every week, to pick 3 out of the 60 or 2 out of the 60 that you really think are right sides is not, in my opinion, not really hard if you do a lot of research.
Yeah. So I would love to do a lot of research
because you're laying out, 5 to 10, right? So to go 8-2 like you do is really fucking impressive.
Yeah, I'm actually this week. I'm picking all the top 25 games plus about 5 more that I'm picking like 23 games this week.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, that's like a full-time job. There's no way I could handle it.
And I don't. And the problem is I don't take a full-time approach. I just sit here and kind of like eyeball them and just go.
Yeah.
Which is not the way to do it. so that's why I tell people don't listen to my picks. I just do it because I've been doing it my whole life.
Yeah.
I love to keep my record. It's just fun to do.
Yeah.
But I'm not the guy to be following. This is just kind of a sideline. So you're I'm going to go through your picks again.
Yep.
You love Texas, the money line.
Money line.
So forget the spread.
My rationale on that is that in week 1, the loss to Maryland. Maryland's a better team than we're giving credit for in that game.
Yep.
And so, and it was at Maryland, if people forget that. Maryland, the last 2 seasons, has had a top 30 recruiting class in high school. Mm-hmm. So that team is a loaded team that they basically played to an effective tie, even though people are going to think of it as a loss, but they're even in strength. And so then Texas last week in the first half, really, handled business. They let up late or whatever, but that's just human element coming into play. You let up late in games.
Yep.
Last week, USC, so then let's look at USC. In week 1 against USC, against UNLV, USC gave up 300 yards rushing to UNLV, which is absurd. Like UNLV has basically me and you in the backfield and like 9 scrubs, blocking for us. And they gave up 300 yards rushing. Last week, it was completely obvious on the road JT Daniels wasn't going to be a competent quarterback on the road in his first ever college game. And he's a true freshman walk-on. He should actually be a senior in high school right now, but he's a freshman in college.
Sure.
And the game plan that Shaw had for the offense was just don't commit a turnover and give them great field position. Let's just win a close battle because these guys can't do anything on our offense. So now USC goes on the road to Texas. What do you think is going to happen? Texas is going to get a W, but they might win by only 3. So I'm just going to play the safe money.
Yeah, I kind of played the hedge on that one myself. I just see maybe a 23-20 game, something in that range. So I'm taking Texas as well, money line. I've got USC plus the 3.5. Not that, anytime the spread's that, 3 points seems to be my threshold. Basically, I would almost never take a team with 2 to 2.5 points and say they're going to lose the game, but I'll take the 2.5 points.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. So
the other side of that is Maryland, which that those segue in nicely, right? Maryland won that game against Texas. Maryland won last week as well, so they're 2-0. The team they're playing is Temple. Temple went 0-2 in 2 home games against 2 teams that were really bad, and now they're going on the road to Maryland, their first ever road game of the year, playing against a Maryland team that's really good. And I think the line is 15, and I just see Maryland winning by 30.
Okay. Yeah, I've got all the games right here, and yeah, my attempt is to pick all the games. And again, that is insane. Especially, I hate the large numbers. You've probably heard me give the 3 reasons why.
Yeah. I don't think 15 is that crazy.
No, it's still
the
game's still viewed as a game by Vegas. Once you get into that 25, 30, 35, 40 range, then it's viewed as a scrimmage. And
right.
We don't know who's going to be playing in the 4th quarter, how hard they're going to be playing, and what the coach's approach to the game is going to be.
Yeah, totally. And then the last one is 2-0 teams, Notre Dame and Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt is going at Notre Dame. I think the line opened at 15. It's now traded down to 13.5. That's because money's flooding in on Vanderbilt's side, and I think money should continue to go on that side. And Vanderbilt has won in 2 massive blowouts to start the year. And Notre Dame, arguably has played a stronger schedule, you could say, but they haven't looked impressive. They may win the game, but they're not going to win it by two touchdowns. So just take the points in Vanderbilt and get your win and leave. And that's my 3 picks.
Yeah, and so in a situation like that, Vandy, when I saw that line, I did the same thing. So what I do typically is I look at the schedule and I pick the games and I pick a score or a point differential before I go look at the Vegas lines, because I don't want to have my opinion swayed by the lines.
Oh,
I want to make a pick and then see, okay, I think Vandy's only going to lose by a touchdown. Oh, it's 13.5 or 15.5. Sure, I'll take that. And that's exactly what I did there. Now, I think people that don't do this on a regular basis or don't follow it don't understand that you can make a good selection and feel good about the selection you made, and it's not always going to work out for you. There's a huge possibility that Vandy's down by a touchdown with 3 minutes left in the game, and it's a great game, and then they give up a garbage touchdown and they lose by 2 touchdowns. You made a good selection. You had the pulse of the game, but it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
But if these two teams played 100 times, I'm pretty sure 70 times we're going to win with Vandy in 13.5. But it's not always going to work out that particular time.
Yeah, that's assuredly true. Especially, if when the turnover game comes into play. If a team commits 2 or 3 red zone turnovers, those should be converted into points, and that should be converted into a W for you.
So, Will, I don't know if you're going to have to maybe start your own YouTube channel or what the deal's going to have to be, because we have somebody requesting on the live chat that they talk to you.
Oh God, no! How do I get out of here as soon as possible? All right,
that is completely up to you.
No, actually, I guess it's your show, man. You tell me what you want me to do.
Well, we totally freelance, well, most of the time, but especially on these Saturday morning deals, I don't have time to produce a 2-hour show, so I just come on here and talk. So this is fine. Bash Gaming, and I know exactly who this person is, so I know that there's not going to be any kind of ribbing or some kind of ridiculous deal going on.
Yes, shortly I'd like to be a silent observer if I just knew how to do that. I apologize. I'm not the most technologically proficient person.
No, I would just take the phone call and you would hear it straight over the feed, over the mic. But we got Will in Manhattan. We can tell that he's right there. It looks like a pretty beautiful day. I'm only about 2 hours away from you here in Connecticut.
You should go to the game in West Point.
Yeah, well, we're gonna. That's another thought here, to take this on the road, maybe during especially these Thursday and Friday night games when there's not a whole lot going on around the country. Anytime somebody's at BC or Connecticut or West Point, to do that. All right, Will, appreciate you jumping on board, man.
All right.
So Will says Vandy in 13.5, Texas straight. I thought there was one other play in there.
And then there was Maryland.
Maryland, yes. Maryland covers 15 against Temple.
Yeah, those are the 3.
Will, I appreciate you jumping on the line.
All right, I will. You want me to exit out here?
Yeah, I can kill it.
All right.
There we go. That was Will in Manhattan. So what I did, and we'll get, I guess Bash Gaming's calling. Somebody's calling.
The call will start at the beep.
It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
It's Bash yet again, and I'm just going to comment on the Will, what he was saying about the spread. I like his spread picks. I actually, he had, what picks was that? Maryland plus, I can't remember what
Maryland minus, here they are. Maryland minus 15 against Temple.
Yeah.
Vandy plus the 13.5 against Notre Dame. Texas money line against USC.
Yeah, and I like his picks there. Will did good with that. There are 3 games also that I look at that are just completely avoid. And, of course, we talked about Ohio State-TCU yesterday. That's one of them. If I was a betting man, I think Ohio State would cover. But I can see TCU covering and winning outright. It could end up in several different ways. I think the same thing with Oklahoma. The questions about Kyle Kempt coming into this game, Oklahoma and Iowa State. I could even see Iowa State winning it outright in another upset. Oklahoma's favored by a lot, 18 points. I like Iowa State plus the 18, but that's a game that I would also avoid if I was betting on it. Not betting on these games I'm talking about. And so, Excuse me. So those two games are definitely avoids. Another one I would avoid is Army against Hawaii. He touched on it. He said the game in West Point, he didn't really touch on the spread, but Army is favored by 6.5 points. And if Hawaii doesn't have that slow start, because that's a noon kickoff on the road, so it's 6 a.m. Hawaii time, and the Bear actually on College Game Day touched on this too, and I agree with him. I've been thinking this all week. The 6.5 that Army's given in this one is really another avoid, because if Hawaii's offense plays to their capability, which they very well could, you know, you have these college teams, it might be an early start for them, but they have practices at 6 a.m. during the off season, and some even during the season. So they have early practices and stuff. So they might be ready for this game, might not be. And you also got to look at the factor of the style of offense that Army runs. If Hawaii is able to keep this one close and they're able to, you know, throw themselves back in the game, Army is going to take a lot of time off the clock, and they may escape winning by 4 or 5. That game's an avoid, because that could go any different way. Army could win by a couple touchdowns. Hawaii could win that game very easily as well. They're a very solid team. So, yeah, that's my comment on Will's lines. A lot better than the 30 minutes. I'll catch you later.
Thanks, Bash Gaming. So let's all understand one thing. When we all tend to say things like, oh, this game could go in any one of 3 directions. Either they could win by a lot, they could win by a little, or maybe they pull off the upset. Think about that. This is basically what could be said about any game. Now, Clemson's a 33-point favorite against Georgia State, UGA over Middle Tennessee by 33. Yes, we would only expect those 2 games to go in 1 to 2 directions. Basically, it's 50-0, 60-0, just some complete annihilation, or they cruise to a 38-10 win, something like that. That's a little less embarrassing and don't even come close to covering. Those are about the only 2 equations for those kind of games where we have one of the best teams in the country playing an FCS school. But other than that, please don't give me that, you know, Toledo, Miami. Yeah, this game could go a couple different ways. Toledo could pull off the upset at home, or Miami could escape with a narrow victory, or maybe Miami's talent puts down the throttle in the second half like they did last year, and they win by more than 3 touchdowns. Yeah, those are the things that could happen. Those are basically the things that could happen in every game. So I get your point that you're looking at a few different scenarios in every game, but those are typically the only scenarios that can happen in any competitive game. All right. Colton has 3 top 25 upsets for us. TCU over Ohio State wouldn't surprise me. San Diego State over Arizona State. Okay, Colton, the other game is not an upset. Texas is a 3.5-point favorite against USC. That is not an upset. All right. Colton, Toledo versus Miami, and Oklahoma versus Iowa State will come down to the wire. Georgia Southern, not Georgia State. My apologies. Yeah, I got Georgia State played Memphis last night. Thank you, Savage Dogs. I wrote down Georgia State. It's Georgia Southern. Again, Georgia State played against Memphis last night and gave up 1 million points in losing. What was funny about that phone call with just checking out the text. What was funny about the phone call with Will there is this has actually happened in the past that I've had so many guests on. 107 just in 2017. 107. So I probably had, over the course of the length of time that I've done this, probably 200 different guests on that I've actually reached out to certain people. And by the time they get back to me, I don't remember who they are. and they'll show up and I'll be like, and of course I schedule these people and I put the name down and the platform, but I've had people contact me and I don't remember who they are. And so as soon as he did that, I thought, oh, I sent this link out to a number of my contributors, guests from the past, and here's a guy that I just don't remember who he is. But basically what happened here is I did that on Gmail to people that I have their email address, obviously, and just sent out a broad blind copy email to say, here's the link if you want to jump on the show today. But I did that on Twitter as well, but I clearly put media guests in bold letters in caps, thinking that only those people would respond. It was great that Will came on. I appreciate him coming on. That's just funny to hear, because I didn't realize that he was not a media person or a media guest, and he jumped on the line regardless. So that's cool. All right. And hey, he had clear audio and video. That's another thing we're going to try to work through with some of our guests, or they won't be guests in the future, is we need clean, clear audio and video. And if there are times in which my feed muddies up, I'm trying to address that. I know it happens once in a while with me. I'm going off the Wi-Fi. I should have it hardwired. There's reasons I don't right now. I used to, but with my guests, I do not want to have guests on here anymore that do not have clear audio and video. If they're in a car and they're driving around and the cell phone doesn't work and it cuts in and out and we're constantly trying to get them, no, I'm not going to put up with that anymore. All right. Anything else on the chat before we check out today's schedule? I'm just saying there's a lack of clarity with those 3 games that I called out. Bash Gaming saying that I cannot comfortably say I think, because other outcomes are highly likely. Bash Gaming, I appreciate you calling and providing your analysis. I still have no idea what you're talking about. I get it that you think those games could go a number of different ways, but almost every game could go a number of different ways. All right, let's look at today's schedule, and I'll let you know what I've got planned. This is what we'll do in terms of viewing and possible instant analysis. All right, here we go. At noon, by far, to me, the most interesting game at noon, the most important game, certainly because it's a conference game, is I will have front and center watching Oklahoma, Iowa State. As, again, a neutral college football guy who tries to watch the best games, the best teams, and try to track it all at the same time. But obviously, I can only really, we talk about multitasking in life. Humans cannot multitask. That means you're doing 2 things at the same time. You can do this and then that and then this and then that over here, and that's multitasking, yes, by definition. But you can only look at one thing at one time. You can only read one thing at one time. Yeah, you can read that and then look at that, and you can go back and forth, and that's multitasking. But truth be known, that's kind of a misnomer. You can only do one thing at a given moment. So what I'm going to be doing is watching Oklahoma, Iowa State front and center on the 50-inch screen. On the smaller screen, then I'm going to go Miami-Toledo, because that could be the other intriguing game. Otherwise, at noon, the third option would be Florida State-Syracuse. That game's on ESPN. Miami-Toledo is on ESPN2, and ABC has the Oklahoma, Iowa State. So based on my cable package with all the ESPNs that I have, no issues there in getting all those games. All right, so that's my noon selection. It's going to be, bam, Oklahoma, Iowa State front and center. Off to the side, Florida State, Syracuse, and Miami, Toledo. Now, if we're in the third quarter and Oklahoma's up 28-0, or even before that, that's going to get kicked. If I think it's just, there's no reason to even put it on a screen at 28-0. And then if I see on the bottom line, it's suddenly 28-17, okay, we'll flip it back on a screen. But it's Oklahoma, Iowa State number 1. It's Miami, Toledo number 2. It's Florida State, Syracuse in order for me. to some degree, and it's going to vary and change possibly depending on score. So that's going to take us through the noon hour, and I really don't see any other games. The only thing that changes that or could change that is if Troy is beating Nebraska by 3 points in the fourth quarter and there's 4 minutes left. Yeah, I'm going to flip to, it's probably the Big Ten Network. Yes. And check out the last 4 minutes of Troy pulling off an upset at Nebraska to see what happens there, or in any of those games. Any of those games. Yeah, if I see a late game situation that's going to decide a game, I'm going to flip to the game. All right, then at 3:30, we've got, and before that, we've got an under-the-radar game in the ACC with Georgia Tech and Pitt. Pitt, of course, got annihilated by Penn State last week. Georgia Tech lost out of conference as well against South Florida, and Georgia Tech has one of the most difficult. Both of these teams have difficult non-conference schedules. Pitt, probably the most difficult in the country, playing Notre Dame, Penn State, and Central Florida. Alabama play that schedule. Notre Dame, Penn State, and Central Florida. And the only reason I pick on Alabama, because I could have said a number of other teams, is because I had an argument with Mike Laval on here a couple of weeks ago, and he was defending Alabama's non-conference choices of Louisville this year and Duke next year. All right. At 2:30, if all the noon games are wipeouts, blowouts, nothing interesting to watch, then I'm going to tune immediately to Notre Dame Vanderbilt at 2:30. Now, most likely, there's going to be a game that's really good, and that's going to catch my attention, and I'm going to watch the fourth quarter of, let's say, Florida State-Syracuse. But I will put on Vandy Notre Dame to take the place of one of the blowouts at noon. 2:30, Vandy at Notre Dame. That will catch a screen. Then at 3:30, boy, this is always a tough go at 3:30. There are two games at 3:30 that I really want to see, and this is not difficult. Oklahoma State, Boise State, Auburn, LSU. So at 3:30, most likely some of the noon games will still be spilling past 3:30. Long games. If they're good, I'll be watching. I'm going to watch the conclusion of Oklahoma, Iowa State, if it's 38-all with 3 minutes left, over watching a kickoff of another game. If I miss the first 5 minutes of LSU-Auburn, no big deal. I want to see the conclusion of close games. That's typically what I want to catch, are the conclusion, the turning points, the game-changing plays. I can analyze the time management of the coaches, the play calling in crunch time. But if they're all a wipeout, they're all over. And fortunately, in recent years, with some of the rules changes with the timing in college football, like they run the clock after the kickoff, those type of rules changes has speeded up the game, sped up the game. Broadcast journalism major, there's a few dove, speeded up in past tense, sped up the game. Anyway, that get some of these games off the air before 3:30, so we don't have to run into the issue that we have overlapping game windows. So at 3:30, for me, I know Boise State, Oklahoma State's a different kind of matchup that we don't see normally. But for me, I'm always going to go back to tradition. I'm going to go back to name brand. And to me, LSU-Auburn, that has to be front and center at 3:30. LSU and Auburn, it's a conference game as well. And then it's Boise State, Oklahoma State on the second game. And really, there's not a third game. Wisconsin, BYU doesn't excite me. Michigan, SMU on BTN. Baylor, Duke could be interesting on FS1. But again, those are going to be games that I'm going to go to if they're close in the fourth quarter. Otherwise, I'm just going to have split attention between LSU, Auburn, and Boise State, Oklahoma State. All right. Then The SEC network typically goes with a 1-4-7 lineup Eastern time to counter program the other slots of noon, 3:30, etc. To try to catch games in the middle and keep you watching to overlap the other games. It's kind of like old TBS. Remember WTBS when it was WTBS? And they came up with the really a creative way to counter program when people actually sat and watched TV and watched the entire show and the commercials, and you didn't flip around a whole lot and didn't watch the internet, of course, is that TBS started all of its shows at 35 or 05 because they wanted to then keep you past the start of the other shows on the other networks. And so you would have no incentive. Oh, I missed the first 5 minutes because I was watching the last 5 minutes of Friends. I missed the first 5 minutes of some other show on some other network. So I'm going to stay and I'm going to continue to watch WTBS. Anyway, that's what the SEC network's doing here by putting its games on 1-4 to counter the other networks. Okay. So those are the 3:30 selections. Other games to keep an eye on: Houston at Texas Tech. And that's pretty much it until 7 o'clock. Alabama, Ole Miss. Now at 7 o'clock, typically there are games at 3:30 that are running over past 7 o'clock, and we don't get to see the kickoff at 7 o'clock. But Alabama, Ole Miss is going to gain my attention at 7 o'clock once the other games are off the air. And I'm going to watch Alabama and Ole Miss until 8 o'clock when I'm most likely going to, yes, Ohio State and TCU at 8 o'clock. Now, they won't kick off until about 8:15. So for a good hour and 15 minutes, I can see more than a quarter of Alabama Ole Miss. And by that time, it's probably going to be 28-7. And so I won't mind tuning away from the Ole Miss Alabama game. So in prime time, clearly there is two games. There are two games to be watching here. It's Ohio State and TCU. Then it's USC and Texas. Those are the two games to watch in prime time at 8 o'clock. Now there's a bunch of games that kick off at 7 and 7:30 that could gain my attention before 8 o'clock. Mizzou at Purdue on the Big Ten Network. Interesting matchup there. And then certainly you've got there was another couple games in here that I thought could be interesting to check out for a few minutes here and there. I think the game that I was looking for was Northern Illinois was playing somebody. I think they were playing Iowa. No, it's Northern Iowa at Iowa. I'm losing track of the games that I saw. But anyway, it's basically going to be Alabama, Ole Miss at 7 o'clock. Then I'm going to wait for TCU, Ohio State, Texas, USC are going to have the two screens at 8 o'clock. Then we're going to be sometime in the third quarter of those two games when Washington and Utah start at 10 o'clock. So I put the DVR on for Washington, Utah. And as soon as Ohio State, TCU is either a blowout or the game's over, or Texas and USC blowout or game over, boom, I'm going to Washington and Utah on DVR, and I'm going to try to catch up. This is what I do late night, is I tape these 10 o'clock games. So I'm going to tape definitely Washington, Utah, but I'm probably going to tape some combination of, well, we pretty much just have either UCLA, Fresno State, or most likely taking precedence will be Arizona State, San Diego State. A really good get for CBS Sportsnet. They rarely have that good of a game, but San Diego State and Arizona State late night. And I'll tape those games, and then I'll try to catch up to them. And there you go. And then we will be here for instant analysis whenever. After the noon games, if I think there's something to talk about and we can catch the end of the noon games and watch the final drives together and talk about it leading into the 3:30, and the same thing at 3:30 if it's 7 o'clock and we're gearing up for Alabama, Ole Miss, and also the 8 o'clock games, and we can catch the final drives of the 3:30 games and analyze that and prepare everyone for TCU, Ohio State, and Alabama, Ole Miss, and USC, Texas. We'll do that. So most likely you're going to see me back here at about 3:15. And then you're going to see me back here most likely at around 7 or 7:15, 7:30, something in that range. And then late night. The only thing that's going to change that is my boy's going to be over. We're going to be watching football at some point today when he figures his schedule out. So that would be the only thing that would knock me off of my schedule of instant analysis recaps after the noon games, the 3:30 games, the primetime games, and the late night games. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, and subscribe. During one of these video sessions, certainly one of the live streams when I'm talking to you guys the entire time and I'm hearing from you guys on the live chat and on the phone calls, I would love, and I'll get to the chat in just a second, I would love to see about 50% of the people that watched to actually like the video. So we did a live stream last night. It's probably got about 200 views. And there's probably 15 likes. That's my guess. I would love to see 100 likes for 200 views. It's never going to be anywhere close to 100%, but somewhere close. All right. All I did is mention TBS, and you guys went off here. George is checking out. Good to see you. Yeah, it's 11:15. We'll be off here in the next 20 to 30 minutes, something in that range, depending on what else we have to talk about. Barely anybody know that what TNT, True TV, and TBS are. You're probably right. Buckeyes win a close one, 45-17. Will gave me a like. Will Riedlinger. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Will. Again, if you care to, let us know who you root for and how long you've been watching. And thanks for the like. I don't know exactly how YouTube works, but I am told that likes generate search engines and suggested videos. And if there are a lot of likes and even dislikes, if you really hate what I had to say and you think I'm a complete moron, dislike the video. If you don't agree with me, but you think I at least did my homework, I know what I'm talking about, I'm coming at it logically and neutrally, and you still think I'm wrong, but you at least think I'm capable and competent, I would like the video if I'm watching somebody like that. All right. 42-38 TCU, according to Colton. I would not be surprised by that. I did pick the Buckeyes 38-28. And once again, I don't know if this is going to be the last time this week because we still have about 9 hours to kick off. But NCIS Fanatic 21 has reminded us once again, Ohio State's going to win 45-24. The score is burnt into my brain. George says goodbye. And there were some comments back here that somebody wanted a response. Eric, Mark, you saying upset picks include just beating the spread or outright wins. Okay, an upset pick to me is winning the game outright. The reason Vegas creates a point spread is to level the playing field. That is basically like a handicap in golf. It is saying that Wisconsin is 22 points better than BYU. So if BYU covers the spread but does not win the game, that's not an upset. They were given 22 points. That's an even playing field. That is an even concept of here's the game, here's the matchup. The evaluation is that this team's 22 points better. Therefore, this team's getting 22 points. So if they lose by 15, they did not pull off an upset. It's just that they covered the spread. No, I'm talking about straight upsets. Winning over the point spread. And that's happened 10 times in the 38 games that I have selected the first 2 weeks. And I select all the top 25 games plus some other games of interest. So a little bit outside the top 25. 10 times the underdog has flat out won the game in 38 games. You're right. The intros for Saturday Night Football, NCIS Fanatic 21 are too long. There's too much competition out there. People don't want to. We have absorbed. You either are the type of fan that you just want to watch the game. Give me the kickoff. I'm watching the game. I don't care what these guys have to say. Or you're the fan that has been taking this stuff in and wants to hear analysis. Well, if you're that person, you've been taking in analysis the entire game, or the entire week, I should say, leading up to the game. So getting the last bullet points on the game and the keys to the game, whatever. It's not really that significant in this day and age. And for most of us, I will speak for myself. If a game's kicking off on ESPN or ABC at 8:15, or any of the networks, it doesn't matter, I am not sticking around for 15 minutes of pregame. I'm flipping around because there are other games. It's not 1975. There are other games being played that are probably meaningful and interesting. Navy Thomas, TBS screws up everything they touch. They messed up the Major League Baseball postseason. Colton, I would have to agree. Kansas Rutgers naptime video. All right, you guys talking about backpacks. Scott Frost will find a way. How bad is Adrian Martinez hurt? Based on what Parker Gabriel told us from Husker Extra this week, that's going to be a game time decision. Maybe Navy Thomas has something a little bit more recent. Colton, would I watch UTEP beat Tennessee? Yeah, if I see that game's 38-35 with 3 minutes left, yeah, I'll flip to that. Colton says Troy could beat Nebraska. Sure they could. Arizona and Wazoo on upset alert versus FCS teams on the nightcap. Jamie gives us some great picks by Will, I believe. Great job, Will. Yeah, Will was great. I just think it was funny because for about 30 seconds, I'm looking at this guy thinking, who is that? Who is that? Who did I give a link to? He's got to be a guy that I've had on in the past because, again, I've had people come back on that I hadn't had on in a year, and I forgot completely who they were. And I thought that was one of those deals. But Will, just a fan, just a viewer. And I hate using the term fans. I don't know that I have fans. I have viewers, but a fan of the sport. And so Will let me know. I love that he's tracking my picks and his picks. And he's doing extremely well. And he chooses about 3 games per week. And then he matches up my picks and his picks. And if we agree, then he lays some money on those games and he's winning more than 80% of the time. And he's doing just fine by himself at 65%. But that's a smart way to play it. I need to trade emails with Will, get his picks, match them up with mine, and then I go play. And I'm going to win 80-some% of the time, apparently. Yeah, NCIS Fanatic 21. I don't know where Zoom play has been recently. I don't know. Maybe he's got other things going on in his life. Hopefully nothing serious. But we've not heard from him in a while. Oh, there's Will. That's Will. That was not an interruption, Will. That was just me not having any idea that it was possible, which I did know. I just didn't conceive because it hasn't happened before in the times that I've just sent out a link on Twitter. Typically, the people that pick it up are the people that come on a regular basis. But Will joining the show, joining the live chat. It's good to hear from Will down there in beautiful Manhattan. Possibly with a job that just based on the one line that I always had, at least in the last 10 years, a thought that maybe I should have gone into finance because Wall Street and the stock market intrigues me. Much like This does. So the same people that are interested in the stock market that like football are interested in the odds and the money lines and the point spreads and the workings of Vegas. It's the same. There's a correlation there, certainly. And I became kind of not a day trader. I didn't gain that much knowledge, but about 10 years ago, went to workshops, really started to get into it, started to build my own formulas and that sort of thing, and really got into it. But this took me away. And now I just listen to guys probably like Will or other people that are online that have proven to be good. I just take their stock picks and I just play them. That would be like doing this and just saying, hey, I want to hear from this guy or that guy, and they're picking 68% against the spread. Just going to listen to them, not even think about it. Boom, they're 5 picks for the week. I'm playing them. I'm going to put $100 in each game, or you try to do it yourself and build a model, or just make reasonable calls, like it seemed like Will does, and see how good you do against the money line or against the point spread. All right, guys, I appreciate you jumping on the line. If anybody else wants to call, it's 860, and I'll put it in the chat, 860-325-3687. My guy, Marty, who I used to work with at ESPN, who was at ESPN for 19 years and now runs his own production company. And you may have heard me reference him from time to time in the past. There was a time in which we did about 25 shows on Wednesday night that he actually did the production for me via satellite, meaning he was in a different location, not via satellite, but he was in a satellite location and he was controlling my production, putting on all the fancy graphics, the music, the intro, and doing all that for me just to kind of practice for him, but it benefited me at the same time. That's what I need. I'm going to have to do all that myself. I'm going to have to buy it and try to talk and host the show and analyze the games and do all that at the same time. We'll give it a shot. But that would obviously help out with the graphics and the look of the show. And we want this to look much better and work much better. James Laurinaitis will be on the call for Troy, Nebraska on BTN. Yeah, it's funny, Bash Gaming, because people were telling me for months that they wanted a call-in show and that it would be great. I even had people that do other YouTube channels that have their own deal going on telling me you should do a call-in show and wanted me to do a call-in show for them. And so we instituted the call-in, and some people call. Bash Gaming calls all the time. George calls all the time. DeAndre's called a number of times. Prince called a couple times, or at least once, and a few other people have called. But we do have the phone lines there at, there it goes, 860-325-3687. Of course, in the midst of reading off the phone line, YouTube found it opportune time to pop something up right in front of the number. So those are my thoughts on college football. If you guys want some last minute, last second info, insight, analysis, we previewed 10 games this week in depth, 30, 40, 50 minutes. And with Ohio State and TCU, 3 different segments with Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts, with Claire Crawford, and with Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone. 3 different segments on Ohio State TCU, a few different segments on both the Texas side and the USC side, and 10 other important games this week, LSU-Auburn included. And of course, for you Miami fans, you're out there, you drive part of this channel. If I could replicate the Miami following I have with about 20 other programs, then we would have it made. And you would see the subscriber list and the viewership skyrocket. If I could replicate that, there are just as many fans for about 25 other schools as Miami. It's just that the Miami fan base, the Miami people have found me. Bash Gaming, Nick Bosa with 6 straight games with a sack, longest in FBS. Does it continue today? My guess would be yes, but he could still have a profound effect on the game and not have a sack, as we know. It's just a stat that doesn't always measure pass rush effectiveness. Will, now for sure I don't cover a single game. Yeah, I really laid you out on that one, but you jumped on here and gave us the picks. They're great. Yeah. It reminds me of my friend, this was about 5 years ago, who had been watching a particular analyst that was strictly a handicapper, odds maker, not a personality, not a person who analyzes the game for any other reason than for betting purposes. And so he threw $600 or $800 at this guy for the football season. And then he was for the NFL season. And he was just irate after week 1 when the guy went 0-3 or 1-5 on his picks. And he was complaining to me. And I said, it's the betting game. This guy tells you that he picks 62% against the spread. And if you've been tracking that to verify that, then he's going to continue most likely picking 62% of the games. He missed them this week. You can't come through every week. Pro Football Focus said that Ohio State is the best defensive line in the country after crunching the numbers. What numbers can they crunch? They've played Oregon State and Rutgers. NCI is Fanatic 21. For as much as I respect your perspective, not necessarily Pro Football Focus, and I know that they do a great job, but our metrics at this point of the season after 2 games are meaningless, next to meaningless, close to meaningless. How anybody can say anybody's got the best defensive line in the country unless a scout, an NFL scout, says, I've watched these guys on game tape. These guys are the best. This is the best collection of talent on a defensive front. But in terms of the metrics, it's difficult with football. You've got to get 4 or 5 weeks deep into it, I would think, to really have the metrics mean anything. And especially when you haven't played, in Ohio State's case, a good team. All right. There we've got it. I think I'm going to shut things down and let you guys prepare for the noon kickoffs. I will as well. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and some last-minute housekeeping. The Amazon links that you see in the description section. Here's the deal. Please listen this one time because anytime that I push for something, I try to limit it to like a 10-second call because you guys don't need to be listening to me ramble on about Patreon or Amazon or anything for 3 minutes. 10 seconds to explain. The Amazon links in any of the video description sections can be used to enter Amazon. You do not need to purchase the items in the links. Just enter Amazon and do your regular shopping on Amazon using those links. That would help us out tremendously. The other thing is we've got a newsletter that we started week 1 of the college football season. It's released each and every Monday. If you have yet to join the newsletter, The Voice of College Football, please send your email to MarkRogersTV@gmail. I have not received any negative feedback about the newsletter. That doesn't mean it can't and won't improve, but I've received probably 25 out of the 60 newsletters that went out last week, 25 just positive raving reviews about the content there. So we want to build the newsletter. And so please send your email to MarkRogersTV@gmail, and I'll get you on the newsletter list. And if you want the back copies, I will send those along as well. If you're doing chores, running errands, exercising, whatever you're doing, you can catch the audio at Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play as I take a phone call.
The call will start at the beep.
This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who do I got on the line?
It's George. Good morning, Mark.
George, what's going on? 7 a.m., huh?
Well, now it's almost 8 or something.
Sure.
What is it? 8:30. Oh, my God. Football comes on in 28 minutes.
Yes, it does. What's on your mind?
What a wonderful way to wake up on Saturday in Oregon. 9 a.m. You're planted in the chair for the day, ready to go.
I've experienced that a few times when I visited folks on the West Coast, where I had to adjust to, okay, this is kind of cool because we can get up and bam, I'm right on it. Football at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then late at night, you can go out and not have to worry about I'm missing games.
Yep.
So, George, did you call for a particular reason?
Yeah. I'm sorry I cussed last night. I was drinking 9% beers, and I had 4 of them, and it's like drinking wine or something. It's too strong.
Well,
anyway,
I think you understand my take on that is that if somebody gets on here and slips and says 1 or 2 cuss words during a 5-minute conversation,
right,
that's fine. I'm not going to make a big deal about it.
I called this morning because I'm drinking coffee and totally sober, and I just wanted to apologize, and I don't think I'm in any danger of slipping.
No, I'm saying the slips are fine. It's just when it's like 10 or 12 or 15, especially when, again, I would like anybody to be able to watch the video. An 8-year-old, I would love to be able to watch the video.
Right, I agree. I have a bunch of kids who are grown now, but still. You know what, Mark? I cussed like a sailor when my kids were growing up.
Yep.
And I asked them never to cuss, and I explained to them why. I have never heard these kids cuss. 4 boys and a girl.
That means
they respect. Yeah,
yes.
They respected my wishes. I explained it to them, how a gentleman doesn't do it, and how I used to be a sailor, blah, blah, blah. They did it.
Yeah, so basically that speaks a lot for you setting a precedent and holding them accountable and you earning and gaining their trust and their respect. Exactly.
Yeah, I got lucky.
I did too. My kids, I was talking to somebody on the phone the other night. They were going on and railing on their kids. And I was just thinking, I can't relate. My kids were great. They're kids. Sure, they do stupid things from time to time, but they've been great. Yeah. I was extremely fortunate.
I would get them up against the wall when they were like half my size. And I would say, listen, I could beat you within an inch of your life, but it wouldn't make you behave. You know, kids can take a repeated beating, and I'd say you have to be good because you want to be good. It has to be a voluntary thing. I told him you're an actor. I was a waiter at the time. And I said, I pretend I'm an actor playing a waiter when I go to work, you know? And I just explained shit to them, and they responded to that explanation, you know? Instead of, I can't stand it. It breaks my heart when I hear people yell at kids like that. Yeah. They're people too, you know. God, I don't want to crush someone's little spirit when they're in a formative year, you know.
I walked into a Walmart last night, George, and I was only about 10 steps inside the Walmart, and there was a kid that was probably 1.5 to 2 years old, just screaming at the top of its lungs in the front of the cart, and the mother, I assume it's the mother, was yelling back at the kid, and I was thinking, that kid is just screaming louder and louder the more you yell at it. So that's not working.
Yeah. I think that happens a lot in Walmart, more than most stores, from my experience. Hey, you mentioned TBS and Turner Broadcasting earlier.
Yes.
Did you see my comment? Ted Turner let me use this limo and chauffeur in 1974.
I did. I missed that comment, or else you would have heard it out of my mouth. That's what's the story there?
I was 14 years old living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was the president of a junior achievement company. You know how kids run their own companies, junior achievement?
Yes.
You ever heard of that?
I have.
And anyway, I won a grand prize at Georgia Tech University. There was a seminar at Georgia Tech, and I attended, and I was the last one in the door. I stuck my name in that basket. They spun this thing with like 1 million. The whole auditorium was full, and I won. The last name in was the first name out. How's that possible? Anyway, I won, and that was my prize. I got like $300 use of his chauffeur, a corsage. He owned the Atlanta Flames at the time. I attended the hockey game, dinner at the Hyatt on the spinning restaurant. I don't know if it's still there on top of the building. And yeah, it was awesome. I got to hang out with his chauffeur. It was just, you know, we hung out a while and talked. It was so cool. It was like driving Miss Daisy chauffeur. You know, this guy was so noble, salt and pepper hair. It was just awesome. Anyway, good life. Had a good life. My dad owned a restaurant and a hotel in Atlanta. I lived there a long time.
So at some point, probably in the off season, we'll serve up the topic of brushes with greatness or with fame or whatever. That will be the topic.
Hey, listen, I started a website online where we could all vote online every week, and they shut it down and took it away. I woke up one morning and my website was owned by a guy in Rome, Italy. I called the company and said, what happened to my website? Snap Names will protect your domain. And Snap Names said, we've never seen this one before. They didn't want me to have voting online, real voting for real people every week. And listen, it was $5 a week to vote. And I promised people I would never take one $5 bill, that we were going to accumulate those in a trust and buy a major corporation every week until we owned every company on earth. How you like that?
That's tremendous.
Yeah, they took it away from me. They said, no, I'm glad they didn't shoot me in the head, really. Or maybe that would have been better. I don't know.
So since we do talk, go right ahead, George.
Go ahead.
I was just
today the Florida game today might be interesting because we might get to see a new quarterback.
So would that be Kyle Trask or Emory Jones?
I'm guessing Trask would get his turn next. You know, and I think that's why Mullen started Franks. To be honest, let him go for it. Who cares at this point? The season's almost lost already. So that's good. I like the progression, and hopefully, if Trask fails, Emory will be ready by then.
Yeah, everybody wants to see Emory, but he's obviously not up to it in maybe the same manner that Mark Richt is judging that N'Kosi Perry and Jaron Williams aren't up to it, even though Miami fans would disagree with that, and I would as well to a certain extent, for as much as I can know from where I'm sitting. Speaking of quarterbacks, we've got some late quarterback news in from Swampy McGee, and I believe we can trust this, that Iowa State redshirt sophomore quarterback Zeb Noland is expected to start Saturday's game against Oklahoma, which kicks off in about 25 minutes. In the end, Kyle Kempt was not able to recover to give it a go. So that puts my Iowa State plus 18.5 in a bit of jeopardy.
Damn. 18.5, huh?
Yes. I'll take it and run with it. But with the quarterback issue, that's the kid, Kyle Kempt, who made his first start last year. Actually, I don't believe it was a start. There was an injury. He came into the game for Joel Lanning, torched the Sooners, put up 38 points, 365 yards passing, and then took over the job and had a really good season. But he's going to miss today's game.
What time's that game?
That's a noon game, Iowa State and Oklahoma.
All right.
That's coming up here in about 25 minutes. So, George, somebody's asking on the live chat here. Swampy McGee is asking, can Kyle Trask run the option?
He did in high school.
Okay.
That's all we have. That's all we have on him.
Yeah.
Or was it the 8th grade? I'm not sure. I'm just saying, really, in high school. He never started in high school, but he did run the option in high school when he did get in. He was playing behind the Eric guy that is Houston's quarterback, or maybe he's a wide receiver now. I'm not sure. Derek King. He was behind him, so he never got to start. Derek King is.
All right. Yeah. The Houston kid.
But he's big. He's 6'5", 235. He should be able to do something. Or just run, if nothing else. But he throws a pretty ball. College football happens so fast. It's such a fast sport. You either got it or you don't. Franks doesn't seem to be able to process all that information in 2 seconds or 3 seconds. It's too much.
So you're going with Trask just based on logic. You didn't hear anything, did you?
No, I just can't imagine us suffering through a whole game. If Franks messes up, I think he'll pull him. And maybe he'll start him. I don't know. But I just can't imagine sitting through another debacle.
Okay, George.
We're playing Colorado State. We could lose this game. I don't want to lose to Colorado State, Jim McElwain's old team. That would be embarrassing more than Kentucky, maybe.
Yes, it would be. It's a group of 5. It's Colorado State, not even a good Colorado State team, a team that's probably going to win 6 or 7 games.
Hey, can I ask a question? I should know this, but what does group of 5 mean?
Well, it's just the other. So we've got 10 total conferences in the FBS. So the Power 5, the other 5 are just the other 5. The MAC, the Sun Belt, the American, the Conference USA, and the Mountain West. That's the other 5.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Unless you listen
All
to the
right.
American, and they are the 6th of the Power 6, the American Conference.
Hey, that guy you had on last night after me, what a guest. And the guy today that was sitting in the skyscraper in New York, what a guest.
Yeah, sure. Love talking to you guys.
And tell Navy I'm sorry I cussed last night if he was on. He doesn't like that, I know.
Well, there's a few others that comment, and I don't like it as well. Again, it's not a huge deal if it's once or twice. That's not a big deal. And you know, anyway, I just want to be logical, fair, all those things.
Kicked off the air or hung up on either, so I'm going to be careful.
All right. Let's see. Swampy.
Right. Everybody have a great day. Enjoy your football.
All right, George. You as well. Appreciate the call from Oregon.
Yep. Here we go.
All right. Good stuff. We've got. Later, all right, George. Thanks a lot. Bye. All right. The one and only George. And George, before we started the phone lines, he would comment. He probably has left. That this would be a fascinating stat to run, which is impossible at this point. But the most comments made by Mark Rogers TV viewers through the years, but George would be right up there. And my bet, talking about betting, would be that George would win that, and Navy Thomas would be right up there, and NCIS Fanatic 21. And if I've left anybody out, I apologize, but those three come to mind. But George will go on a run, and George just has a funny way about him. And so even before I ever talked to George on the phone, I knew he would be like this from watching and reading his comments, because sometimes, and it's tough to get me to laugh at a comment. I laugh at a lot of things in life. I think sense of humor and the ability to laugh is one of the important things in life. We got to enjoy life, but to read something and to laugh at it takes something. And George does that on a fairly regular basis. He just says some of the funniest things. Okay. NCIS Fanatic 21. Mark, I need some advice. Who should I pick in Georgia Tech and Pitt? All right. We're just talking about the winner of the game. So I believe they're playing at Pitt. The way you phrased it there, you put Pitt last. I haven't looked at these two teams. We only know that Pitt came out the first week against Albany and did what they should do. They lost to Penn State last week, whatever it was, 51-16 or 51-6. But the game was really close for the first half. They were down 7-6 at half, and it was 7-6 into the third quarter. And based by all statistical measures, Pitt was outplaying Penn State. So I just think, yeah, Penn State blew them out, dominated the third and fourth quarters, but those two teams are closer than that. Georgia Tech had some serious issues in special teams and keeping up with South Florida last week in blowing a late lead in the last 5 or 6 minutes, giving up a couple touchdowns, losing by 11 at South Florida, 49-38. I have not seen either team play yet. I saw a handful of plays from the Penn State Pitt game. I saw a handful of plays from the South Florida Georgia Tech game. I would say, even though it's on the road, I believe, as long as the weather's good, and it is here certainly in Connecticut, and I believe in the northern portion of the East here in the United States, that Georgia Tech will win against Pitt. That's my call. Pitt's having some serious issues at quarterback. Our guy, Kenny Pickett, not playing well the first couple games of the season. All right. And Swampy McGee asks a critical question about Taquan Marshall, who had to leave the South Florida game. Is he healthy for this game? Swampy McGee chimes in with Georgia Tech winning 29-26. So it looks like people are backing me on the Georgia Tech pick. I don't know what the spread is, but I believe you just need a winner, and that winner would be Georgia Tech over Pitt. But who knows? Toss-up game. NCIS Fanatic 21 realized that I've given you a 1-0 season thus far when you needed a call on Ole Miss and Texas Tech, with Ole Miss as a 2-point underdog, that the Rebels were going to win. and I gave that to you, and they won it by 20. Herb is saying goodbye. I don't know, Herb, that you ever said hello, but I appreciate you joining the show today. We're getting everybody set for the noon kickoffs in just about 10 minutes. All right, this is Mark Rogers TV, voice of college football. We do it like nobody else here online. Discussion, debate, and analysis for you, the smart fan, and predictions and previews as well. Check out the audio if you're running errands, doing chores, and can't sit and watch the videos. Check out the audio at Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher at Mark Rogers TV. Also, the newsletter each and every week. It comes out on Monday. We've got about 60 plus on the mailing list thus far. Just send your email to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. Share the videos, like the videos, comment, leave your predictions as well. And certainly that helps drive the engine here. Amazon people, if you shop on Amazon or your significant other shops on Amazon, please grab one of the links from any of the videos in the description section. Use that link to enter Amazon. You don't have to purchase that product. Just enter Amazon using one of the links. And that, again, will help us out tremendously. All right. Enjoy your day in college football. I don't know exactly when I'll be on. It has to do with some family plans, but at the same time, I will be on a number of times during the day. Could be after the noon games, the 3:30s, the prime times, and the late night games. We will be on multiple times throughout the day right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. You guys have a great football Saturday.